Hi everyone, hope you're doing well. I want to talk briefly about some interesting information coming out of Steamforged Games' new Dark Souls board game, which was funded on Kickstarter last year. This topic piqued my interest when I read a post by Jigfree on the Dark Souls 3 subreddit, who posted the introduction paragraphs from the board game's rulebook. It contains information about the lore of Dark Souls that has been speculated on but never confirmed. I would normally say that this might just be a bunch of crap, but upon further inspection, Jigfree lets us know that the board game is actually officially licensed by Bandai Namco, the rights holders of the Dark Souls series. The specific entry reads, Dark Souls, the board game, has been developed by Steamforged Games Limited, with full support and license from Bandai Namco Entertainment SAS. Now, it is not verified that FromSoft agrees with everything in the board game, but it does have some credence having support from Bandai Namco. I would recommend that you take everything with a grain of salt, however. I will now read the introduction in the rulebook and pause to focus on anything I find interesting. In the beginning, the world was without form, only a colourless place shrouded by fog and bereft of light. What little of this world existed was ruled by the everlasting dragons, masters of desolate grey crags and the ancient arch trees. This was the Age of the Ancients, an era that would last for time untold until the advent of the First Flame. This basically reiterates information we already know and is not really contested, but let's keep reading and see what we find out. Taking their strength from the Lord Souls found within the flame, 3 of the Lords, godlike beings born of the dark, and possessing immeasurable power, did smite the everlasting dragons from the skies and destroy their kind. Thus began the Age of Fire, when humanity began to spread throughout the land and both cities and kingdoms were formed and ruled by the Lords. Yet for all their power, the Lords would continue the dominion only for as long as the first flame burned, and soon it began to wane. Fearing the end of their reign and the growing strength of humanity, the Lords searched desperately for ways to restore the sacred fire. First, we note that specifically 3 Lords are mentioned, who we know to be Gwyn, the Witch of Izalith, and Nito. There is no mention of the furtive pygmy yet. What is interesting is that it states that they were born of the dark. Dark is capitalized, presumably implying that it is in reference to an entity, but that doesn't really make sense. I don't see how the 3 Lords could have been born from the dark, or in other words the Dark Soul, if the Dark Soul was found by the furtive pygmy after the 3 Lord Souls were located. Feel free to let me know what you think though. After the war with the dragons, humanity, presumably those born from the Dark Soul, began filling the cities and towns of Lordran, and no one seems to have hollowed at this point. I will come back to this point shortly. As the scale began to tip with the dying of the flame, humanity began to grow stronger. Let's read on. Eventually, the witch amongst their number was consumed trying to recreate the first flame, and instead gave birth to the flame of chaos, beginning a great war with the demons that issued from the corrupted fires. As the Silver Knights of Gwyn, Lord of Sunlight, were charred black and fell during the conflict, he finally divined that the only way was to sacrifice himself to the first flame and unnaturally prolong the Age of Fire. He became the first Lord of Cinder, and in doing so unleashed the curse of undeath upon humanity, denying them their true ascendance as long as the Age of Fire continued. Here the rulebook describes the Witch of Izalith and her attempt to recreate the first flame. It says that she was consumed trying to recreate the first flame and instead gave birth to the flame of chaos, beginning a great war with the demons that issued from the corrupted fires. This is pretty fascinating if it is true. This would confirm that the Black Knights of Gwyn did fight the demons in an actual war, rather than them just fighting them on the way to the kiln, which is something I wasn't really sure about during my video on the Black Knights. This is when the whole rulebook thing gets a bit tricky, however. The description of the Black Knight armor in Dark Souls 3 clearly states, the knights served the first Lord Gwyn and followed him into the flame upon its linking. The rulebook contradicts this, which casts doubt on its legitimacy as a whole in my opinion, when it reads that the knights fell to the demons, and none seem to have been destroyed in the link of the flame, according to this. Furthermore, this paragraph comes out and straight up says that Gwyn's linking of the flame began the undead curse. This is something that's been theorized about for quite a while, and if it is true, this could change a lot of what we know about the games. It also mentioned that he denied their true ascendance. Ascendance into what? Lords? Does this mean that Gwyn was once a normal human who ascended? It's stuff like this that makes me question this entire document, but let's read some more. But even this was to prove only transient, the first flame waning once again. Since that time, countless other Lords of Cinder have linked the first flame and prevented the coming of darkness. Each instance has further cursed the world to continue in a torment where the hallowed dead wander amongst the living and ancient creatures exact their wrath upon any foolish enough to stray into their domain. It is in this miserable state that the world has now existed for 1,000 years and more, always on the brink of the Age of Dark, despite the best efforts of the agents of the fourth Lord, the furtive pygmy. The first part of this is par for the course stuff that we already know to be true, but the second part is very intriguing. We can confirm that it has been roughly 1,000 years since the prologue, as Quaylana states in Dark Souls 1, "I realize what I am asking, but please, free their poor souls. Mother's ambitions were misguided, no doubt, but surely 1,000 years of atonement is enough." The last line is something that really gives me the willies, and from the rulebook description. It stipulates that the agents of the furtive pygmy want to bring about the Age of Dark. The fact that the furtive pygmy has agents sounds to me, at least, that the furtive pygmy is still alive. I don't even know what to say about that. We cannot take this to be 100% true, since there have been mistakes made on the construction of the rulebook's introduction. However, if it is true, this could mean that presumably the furtive pygmy resides in Londor itself. I really hate speculation about the furtive pygmy in general, since there is such a vacuum around it, but if the furtive pygmy leads Londor, not the Sable Church, then Karth may be playing a more intriguing role than we have originally thought. Part of Uria's dialogue is, "Karth, I have failed thee," revealing that Uria is an agent of Karth, attempting to hurry along the Age of Dark. I refuse to make any official statements about this, since the information is flawed in parts on a basic level, but take it how you would like it. Let's read on. "You are the chosen undead, bearers of the curse. It is now upon you that the fate of the world rests. You must journey across the realms, defeat the many enemies that will confront you, and ultimately choose not only your destiny, but also that of this world. You may be remembered either as Lords of Cinder yourselves, forever joining the soul of Cinder, or as Ashen Ones, ushering in an age of humanity where the curse of undeath is at last lifted, but chaos will ultimately consume all." The last paragraph is fairly interesting. The first part is, again, things we already know. The second part is interesting, however. It talks about those who have linked the flame and how they join the soul of Cinder, presumably as a protector of the first flame. Then something called the Age of Humanity is mentioned. What the hell is the Age of Humanity? It could just be referring to the Age of Dark, but why wouldn't it just call it by that, the Age of Dark? That's how it's referred to, at least earlier on in the rulebook, after all. This seems to be an option in which the undead curse is lifted, essentially undoing the cycle of linking the flame, but then chaos will consume all? Is this referring to chaos in the flame of chaos fashion, or is it referring to chaos just as a concept? It's not capitalized, which makes me think it's the latter. Anyway, who fucking knows? I don't know if Miyazaki ever saw this, or if it was just stamped by some Bandai Namco suit who didn't care. My conclusion on this is that while it does present several interesting ideas, it is not and should not be considered canon yet. I could be wrong, and the second DLC for DS3 could clarify some things. However, I thought this was intriguing, and I'd like to thank Jigfree for finding it and sharing it with the community. In other news, I have some great stuff coming up. The Silver Knights video will be coming out fairly soon, I hope, and I'm also working hard on the KOTOR analysis and have some other ideas for videos in the future. Until next time.